Welcome everyone to the Citizen on the Record. Our guests this month, actually not week, are Syeda Hameed, who's the former member of the Planning Commission. She is a woman rights activist. She is very well known in that sphere. She's a writer, she's an author, and she has taken a very active interest in promoting, I mean, that's maybe incidental, but in taking Urdu forward, she's really a scholar where the language is concerned. And we have Wajahat Habibullah, who is retired from the Indian Administrative Service. He was the National Minorities Commission chairperson, and before that was very well known as the RTI Commissioner, the Information Commissioner, who brought a new aspect entirely to RTI, which is now under attack in Delhi existing. So welcome both of you, and thank you so much for giving us this little time. And so we know, and after Hardwar, we know it even better, the hate speech, that for a long while, the Muslims are being stereotyped, they are being othered, the community has been suffering, there's a level of demonization which is very visible to all of us across. And that demonization expressed itself or was justified, justified the lynching of individual Muslims and mostly poor Muslims. It went on to Sulli and Bulibai kind of terrible, terrible attack and sexual assault on Muslim women, and the Hardwar hate speech. So we are in this terrible position where an entire community, and of whom the representatives are you, Syeda Hameed and Wajahat Habibullah, who have lived their entire lives here, who have been proud Indians, who have served this country as their own. How do you feel about this? I'll start with you, Syeda ji.
Ji. I'm very shaken now, actually. I never thought I would live to say this, but sometimes I wonder, what choices, why did our Buzurgs make the choice that they did? Exactly for what you have just articulated, Seema. I want to just talk about one small thing here. You talked about the big issues. This is also a big issue. It has, and since you talked about my interest in Urdu, how Urdu, of course, has always been identified as a language of the Muslims, and we have beaten our head in despair, saying that it is not the language of the Muslims. There is Daya Shankar Naseem, there is Brij Narayan Chakbast, there is Ratan Nath Sarshar. What are we going to do with these, great, iconic pundits, writers, and poets? Now, as you know, and Wajahat Saab also knows very well, that they have now reduced the Doordarshan Urdu bulletins from 10 to 2, and whereas they have reinstated other language bulletins because it happened at the height of COVID, Urdu has been, has stayed put at that truncated state. So, these are things like they are like I feel like I'm wearing a crown of thorns, and every time something like that happens, the thorn digs deeper into my skull. So it's just my way of giving an honest answer to your very good question.
Ji. And Wajahat Saab, what do you make of it today? How do you feel?
Well, you see, so far Urdu is concerned, Urdu is of course my language because I'm a Lucknowi, but I have really not had any really deep feeling for Urdu, although my mother was the founder of the Urdu Academy and a poetess in her own right. But I have been really brought up with English, so Urdu does not strike such a chord with me as it does with Syeda. Except that I do believe that, all Indians should be extremely proud of the language Urdu, because Urdu is an image of how the Indian mind was able to adapt Arabic, Persian, and Latin, and all the international languages into becoming an Indian language. The basis of Urdu is not Arabic or Persian; it is Sanskrit. The great pioneer of Urdu is Tulsidas, who was from the very area of which I'm talking about. And therefore, we should be proud of how we adapted all these Indian languages into the Indian milieu and produced this great language, which has produced such great poets, and as Syeda mentioned, of every community and every area. And this Uttar Pradesh, where we are, could be, we of course claim in Lucknow that we are the home of Urdu. Of course, that is contested both by those of Delhi, particularly the Punjab and the Hyderabadis, but nevertheless, that was the debate earlier. And now, unfortunately, as Syeda points out, a result of this petty bickering over issues like this has reduced the language to a mere shadow of what it is and what its potential. Even Hindi films, you may call them Hindi films, but the basis of the language of Hindi films was for generations Urdu. And the greatest poets and the greatest songwriters, and all of them happen to be experts in Urdu. But that said, I would share Syeda Bibi's apprehensions on what has become of those features of our society, and I'm talking specifically of our society because I regard this as Indian society, those features which have distinct Muslim features. Now, how do you distinguish on this? You don't. Yet today, the damage that has been done is that you are distinguishing. Now, for example, Dhrupad, the music form Dhrupad. This is the oldest form of music in India, the oldest surviving form. Yet the greatest exponents happen to be Muslims. Is that therefore part of our Muslim tradition? Is that part of our ancient Indian tradition? My case is that all these, like the Urdu language, are all repositories of an ancient civilizational evolution, which makes India what India is today.
Right.
And therefore, distinguishing between what you might identify as Muslim features, for example, the Urdu language, music, and Indian features, is on the one hand othering the Muslim, on the other hand, more seriously, dividing the people of India between the two largest communities in this country.
मैं अपना आपसे एक छोटा एक्सपीरियंस इतना सा शेयर करूंगी फॉर 30 सेकंड्स. मैं रोज सुबह योगा करती हूँ. सो एट द एंड ऑफ योगा आई डू अ सूर्य नमस्कार एंड आई से ओम सूर्याय नमः. As I was saying it, and I always put on the some music as I was my Allegra. So as I was saying Om Suryaya Namaha, it was Pandit Jasraj singing Mero Allah Meherban.
Amazing.
So I mean that's
That's
the
composite. That's the composite culture which we all grew up with. You all and our parents and our grandparents. And today you're being reduced literally to a shell, right?
But Seema, I would differ with you in one nicety, I may put it that.
Okay.
It's often referred to as a composite culture.
Okay.
I don't agree with the terminology, with the composite culture. I believe that this is Indian culture.
Right.
Indian culture, if you say is composite, I would say yes. But to talk of a particular culture as composite would again be distinguishing it from Indian culture as a whole.
No.
Because this is what is now. Because Indian culture has been an evolutionary process. And the old Indian culture, which existed even from the time of the Indus Valley civilization.
Right. So I'm going to now, this is sort of a beautiful background that we've got to where everybody's emerged from, what we have imbibed as we have grown over the decades. Syeda ji, I want to ask you, there is now, I'm bringing it contemporary. I'm sorry, I know there's so much to discuss, but we will do that again in another show. But today, this sully and this bully and this whole sexualization of Muslim women, this attack on women per se, the most hideous assault that has been happening, with silence from many who should have taken action. What do you see in this, and why do you feel that this level and expression of communalization at this point has taken such a turn against women?
देखिए औरतों को तो हमेशा इस्तेमाल किया गया है
जी
कि औरतों के जिस्म और औरतों की सेक्सुअलिटी को अटैक करने का मतलब है कि पूरी कम्युनिटी, यू ब्रिंग द होल कम्युनिटी टू इट्स नीज. तो ये एक बहुत ही एक वेल थॉट आउट कंसर्टेड अटैक है. एंड इट इज द वुमेन हु हैव दे डेयर टू स्पीक. हाउ डेयर दे स्पीक? एक तो मुसलमान और फिर मुंह भी खोले उसके बाद, और औरत. सो 3 strikes against, and then they dare to go out there and speak truth to power. So इसीलिए I think this is the target which is very vulnerable. मुसलमान मर्द भी सीना तान के खड़ा हो सकता है. The youth can come out. I live in an area which is 99.9% Muslim, but the 0.101% non-Muslims who stay here are extremely happy and well adjusted. वहाँ I'm always worried कि ऐसी बात होगी तो it's going to be ये जियाले खड़े हो जाएंगे सब सड़कों के नुक्कड़ पे, and then what's going to happen? So
right.
This is to provoke that kind of a reaction.
Right. And Hardwar, the hate speech, the call for genocide. Wajahat Saab, did you ever think that you're going to hear this in your lifetime?
I don't think it's the first time that there has been such a call. But yes, and that brings me to the subject of the media. This is the first time that it's been given such wide publicity and been discussed about and not criticized, and not immediately. Some fellow called Tyagi or somebody who was one time some Rizvi or something like that, and have been arrested. It is, in my view, such a ridiculous effort. I may differ from the general point of view. My faith in India is very, very strong. It will get over this. This will be a period which will be looked upon as an aberration. But as Syeda Begum just said, the question here was, the effort is to humiliate the community by attacking women and so on. Why should they want to humiliate a community which is like any other section of the Indian population? Why should they target a particular community for hate and then come up with this absurd idea of genocide? And Genocide Watch, I think, is the organization, the US, actually said this is a case like Rwanda, and cited examples to how they feel that is equivalent to that. Now, therefore, obviously, I mean, I may have laughed at it as being ridiculous. It is obviously very, very dangerous, because I personally am secure and happy, but there are vulnerable citizens in this country, and the examples of lynchings and things like that demonstrate what the vicious are capable of, and therefore this puts them into danger. But what is hoped to be achieved by this? It diminishes from the standing of India. India as a Hindu nation is not necessarily an alien concept, nor is it against the idea of secularism. India is a country. Hindu is simply a word which, as you know, evolved out of a reference to India, the land of the Hindu. And therefore, we can all be proud of our great Hindu tradition.
Right.
In fact, Hindu is the word Hindu means dark, and the Persian couplet is कि खाले हिंदुवश बख्शम समरकंदो बुखारा रा. मैं उसके गाल पे जो तिल है उसके लिए I can give up Samarkand and Bukhara.
Oh wow.
That's where the
Yes.
origin of the word Hindu. Just to sort of.
So tell me, Syeda ji, like when it started, we've been seeing for a long time that when you're talking, when you bring somebody on TV particularly, and even in the media, whenever we bring somebody, and this is before maybe 10 years, 15 years, we bring a Hindu extremist and we counter that with a Muslim extremist, or vice versa. The secular voice on television was slowly marginalized and kept out of debates. You always had two extremists shouting at each other, creating an environment, getting at each other. So what do you think, Syeda ji? You think that it all sort of began there, where the media started as an institution playing sides and actually marginalizing the secular voice?
I think media had a big role to play and marginalizing the secular voice. You're absolutely right. It's very exciting to get these, two polarities sitting at the table and tearing each other to bits. And the noisier, the more abusive, the more uncivilized, it's more exciting. It creates more excitement, and you get better
More
ratings.
the entertainment.
And the ratings, खटाखट rating ऊपर जाती है क्योंकि लोग देखते हैं, very excited. और sane आवाजें जो होती हैं, they are not that titillating, if I can use that silly word. So I think that media का इसमें बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेदारी है. कुछ responsible media जो है, तो वो they are obviously ना उनके पास उतना सरमाया है, ना उनके पास उतनी support है, मगर they are just at it continuously, and all the media channels and media persons that I'm referring to when I say that.
Do you, like issues also where it came to Muslim women, where it came to Muslim women taking a position, it was always juxtaposed against the Muslim fundamentalists, say. So if there was something progressive that you did, they used the same community to attack it, and thereby they fed into the same propaganda, right? What do you think about that? आपने इतनी position
वजाहत से किससे पूछ रही हैं?
आपसे.
मुझसे आप पूछ रही हैं. हमने जब मैंने मुसलमान औरतों पे काम करना शुरू किया था in an official capacity, like at an apex national body, that was 1997. At that time, bringing liberal Islam, bringing the liberal face of Islam, which is pro-gender, pro-women, and all that, right in front, and actually engaging in a dialogue with the Maulanas and the Maulvis and getting some good feedback out of that. That seems like a dream, kahin koi aur hi zamana tha. And of course, 1997 and 2022. So there is a lot of time that has gone by. But at that time, all the people in the highest echelons of power were, cued into it and keen about it. And now it seems that this is what the whole agenda is. कि मुसलमान मुक्त भारत बनाना है. अगर मुसलमान मुक्त भारत बनाना है तो उसके लिए these are the strategies, and the media, of course, where media gets resources, media gets advertisements, media gets patronage, so the media plays along. Why should we worry about tomorrow? Today it's a good going today, right. And you see it all around.
Right. Wajahat, so, when you held very sensitive positions, you've been the Minorities Commission, you've been with the Information Commission when it was set up, you've been in Kashmir, you've been taking positions. You have also Wajahat Habibullah. So did that ever sort of come in when the media questioned you? I'm not talking, there is one level of politics where there are agendas, there's hate, there's other things. And then it's the institutions of democracy that are supposed to prevent that from expanding. which hasn't happened, and that's why I'm trying to discuss the media as an institution. So did we react to you as Wajahat, Habibullah, or did we react more to you for your capabilities?
I really don't, I never felt any consciousness of being different because I was a Muslim.
Okay.
Never. I mean, I've served, for example, in the Prime Minister's office. I've served in Jammu and Kashmir, and on the border districts. I was Deputy Commissioner Punch, which is considered, and at that time was even more volatile. When I was in just after the 1971 war, I was there. So I never had any feeling, but perhaps that is because I was not even conscious of that. My own background, the fact that I was son of a general in the Indian Army who actually set up the National Defense Academy and so on, I never got this kind of feeling that I was being discriminated against or looked down upon or looked upon even as different simply because I happened to be a Muslim. And of course, I took objection to the idea of being offered a position because I was Muslim. I took very strong objection. I said, and I remember my grandmother, who was in politics, when the question of separate electorates came up, she took strong objection, although she was in the Muslim League, but she took strong objection to the idea of separate electorates. Does that mean that I'm less capable of my fellow citizens, that I should be given a separate consideration for a particular posting or something? Certainly not. That's offensive. Yet people who would appear on the television things you referred to, they would say, well, there's not enough reservation for Muslims. Muslims should be given more reservation. Now, all that kind of thing, I never agreed with.
I just want to interrupt. What you're saying is exactly, I'm sure, what Syeda ji would say, what I would say,
Yes.
many of us born and brought up in cantonments, that you never felt that you're
No.
a Muslim. But today, do you feel a change, or do you feel, or your family?
So far as I personally am concerned, most of my friends happen to be from different religious groups. I'm not even very conscious of what particular religious group or what caste they are, because they're not my friends because of that. They're my friends because they're my friends. So perhaps, yes, I am a very much what's called a practicing Muslim. But so far as a community is concerned, I feel part of the community of the former civil servants. I feel part of very much the Taluk Bari community of Awadh, which is, of course, a majority Rajput and caste community and a large section of Muslims also, yes. But these are groups of Indians, and I'm just another group of Indians. So I can't see that I have never been given the feeling that I'm different because I happen to be Muslim.
I
My
also
own
want to
village.
come in here, what Wajahat is saying. I want to also come in here. I have in my 6-yard cotton, inexpensive, cheap sari, I have gone to the remotest part of this country, whether it's Garjaroli or Ganyari or Kusheshwar Stan or Bongaigaon, everywhere. In 13 years, 10 years in the Planning Commission and 3 years in the Women's Commission, I've never felt anything but that I am just an Indian woman trying to do something either in the area of gender or in the area of planning. I never felt, I did not care whether it was a tribal woman that I was looking after, whether it was a Muslim girl from a ghetto, it was a scheduled caste, it really didn't matter at all. But now there is acute consciousness.
There is.
Acute consciousness.
And Seema, a point that you might mention, Syeda ji didn't mention herself. Syeda ji is herself a cleric.
Right.
She actually can perform weddings and so on.
In all this, these stories of the Indian Muslim or of the Indian of whom the Muslim is a part, do you feel that if the media had shared this a lot more, had countered what is happening today, this climate of hate, by not feeding into it, but by countering it with, I know you don't like the word composite culture, but the unity amongst all the citizens of India, that would have helped, Syeda ji?
I think it would have been one major corrective in the kind of mahal in which we are living and breathing. Had media talked about Raghupati Sahai Firak Gorakhpuri instead of the rubbish that goes on in the channels of Daya Shankar Naseem, of Pandit Brij Narayan Chakbast, of Pandit Anand Narayan Mullah. By the way, Mullah was not a mullah, he was a mullah who preferred to call himself a mullah, one of the greatest
Kashmiri
poets of the Urdu language. And you know it because wo Kashmiri the. And Kashmir is in your blood, and I am also a born Kashmiri, so we have something very common between the three of us here. So media never, there was only one Gulzar who said, "Badi aristocracy hai Urdu zaba mein, फकीरी में अमीरी का मजा देती है उर्दू." बड़ी एरिस्टोक्रेसी है उर्दू ज़बान में, फकीरी में अमीरी का मजा देती है उर्दू. यानी बट एक गुलजार है, उन्हीं को प्ले अप करते चले जाएं. But there is a thousands of gulzars that media could have used.
So did you feel that, Wajahat Saab, the ignorance of the media is also fed into the othering and the stereotyping, apart from the fact that there is a deliberate intent also?
Well, you see, this process of othering and discrimination goes back much further, and now you can see it in the kind of statements that for 1,000 years the Muslims have ruled India and so on. This is said by people who claim to know some history and who in fact don't know any at all, because this is just not true. This kind of thinking, and therefore to blame the media, yes, because they're feeding off this kind of thinking. But what you need to blame is that kind of thinking in itself, and that has come from that. Not even we can't even blame the present setup establishment for that, because this really was initiated after the First War of Independence in order to divide the country, in order to keep the country divided, an effort that culminated in its partition. And therefore, it goes back much further than that. And therefore, you have these kinds of absurd, even I find in terms of book reviews, the books that are being written. There's recently a book on the Emperor Akbar, and it is not examined from a historical point of view. An effort is made to point out the Hindu-Muslim relations in the time of Akbar. I mean, these are absurd. There is an excellent work on the rebel sultans by Pillai, who has brought out the synthesis in the cultures and civilization which emerged out of Vijayanagar and the Demoni kingdoms in South India. And yet I heard him at a literary fest where the person was going on questioning him about how these Hindu-Muslim relations had developed at that time. It's not a question of Hindu-Muslim relations at that time. Those were rulers who happened to be Muslims. If you take the Mughal rulers, for example, in fact, in the time of Aurangzeb, by the time Aurangzeb's rule ended in 1707, the large bulk of his aristocracy, senior-most aristocracy, were Rajputs and Maratha.
Yeah. So I think we'll draw this fascinating discussion to a close. I'll let Syeda ji have the last word. It is strange that today when we in the media have everything, we have technology, we have phones, we have connectivity, and there was a time when we become less honest in our reportage and maybe more ignorant. Would you like to have a last word about the media today and what you think we could do to build bridges?
I can only say it from my very strong belief that media could take upon itself a little bit of work of education. There was one person who's very eminent, and Wajahat is in tune with me, I know when I say that. He was a man called Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, who said that मुसलमानों का फर्ज है कि हिंदुओं के साथ मिलके उनका मजहबी फर्ज है कि हिंदुओं के साथ मिलके मुल्क की आज़ादी की जद्दोजहद करें, ये उनका मजहबी फर्ज है। कभी इस बात को, जब ये हालात इतने खराब हुए, कब did media ever raise that voice? Did media ever even try to learn what he said, or people in his way of thinking, how they articulated this relationship between Hindus and Muslims as one on a common mahaz, जो मुल्क की आज़ादी का महाज था? कभी नहीं मीडिया ने किया। विद एक्सेप्शन, मीडिया ने कभी इस बात को न समझने की कोशिश की, न समझाने की कोशिश की।
Right. So true. So on that, I'm going to thank you both for giving us this time. And hopefully we will meet again on yet another discussion, maybe not so much to do with the media, but about the state of the minorities. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Seema.